All right. Sit down. All right, so here's the big problem. I found out this morning that Brittany wasn't going to announce me and John was. And the problem with that is that John seems to pump people up too much, and he sets the bar super high. I just got to tell you guys, I'm not that good, okay? So let's lower that bar, okay? Yep, you promise little, and then you can reach that goal easier. So anyway, last night I decided at about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock last night, I'd written my message, practiced it a few times, and I decided, there's just something about this I just don't like. So last night at 6 o'clock, I started rewriting my message, and so anyway, I'm here, and I might have to stick a little closer to the notes than I usually like to do, but I like to pace, and last time I talked, I got told, hey, stand still a little bit, okay? So, so here we go, okay? So I wrote my message, okay? And my wife, mind you, has listened to John's message. She's seen this graphic, okay? So I read my message to my wife because she's way holier than me, and she had all sorts of good input. And I read my message to my wife, and her very first note that she had for me, okay, was, David, what is this? I don't understand. Where do you talk about an octagon here? Like, what's this octagon all about? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, do you not know what what the octagon is? She's like, aren't you supposed to have this is what she said. I am not lying. Are you supposed to have 8 points or something like that? Like, oh my gosh, Emily. Okay, so for those of you guys who are like my wife and haven't connected the dots yet, the MMA fighting, okay, like the UFC and Bellator, whatever, they fight in an octagon cage. Thus the family octagon, okay? That's what it's all about. So, moving on. Okay, so I want to talk to you guys today about priorities and about balance. And I'm going to tell you guys a story, and it's not going to make me look good, okay? I want to be really clear with you guys. It's not going to make me look good because as much as I've grown in my relationship with God, and as much as my wife's grown in her relationship with God, and as far down the road as we've gotten, we're not there yet. And we're not there yet, and I don't feel like most of us are. In fact, none of us are there yet, per se, okay? And so when most pastors get up and they preach a message, they talk about how, they used to be while they were still sinners, and then they've been saved by grace, and they're holy now, and they don't screw up anymore. And this was years back that we had issues, okay? So, but now I'm good, okay? So I just want you guys to know, now I'm good. But I got a story for you guys. And back when it was 2 weeks ago, all right? So, two weeks ago, this story's from 2 weeks ago. No judgment, because I know how John and Brittany are at home. I know them well enough. Trust me. They got some work to do too, okay? Come on. All right? Who's seen Brittany give John that look? Now, you know that look? That look? Okay, when John gets a microphone in his hand, he's a loose cannon, okay? You never know what's going to come out. And Brittany gives the look from the side, and he can feel it, and you can tell because he starts stuttering when he's about to say something. And I've never seen him hold back. He still says it every time. So we got that out of the way. I'm not perfect, okay? Nobody is. I had a guy at work last week who we were pouring some concrete, and he was pouring concrete in our downtown area. And I don't know why I'm telling you this, but anyway, he poured concrete, and he didn't tool in the concrete joints. I don't know if any of you guys are construction guys in here. I'm a construction guy. Anyway, it bugs the crap out of me when people saw cut lines in their concrete rather than tool the joints. Anyway, I said, hey, is there a reason why we didn't tool the joints? Did you about lose the concrete? Did it get really hard? He goes, to be honest with you, Dave? No, there's no reason at all. If I was perfect, I'd take you down to the lake and watch you you could watch me walk across it, but I'm not perfect. So anyway, I'm telling you, I'm not perfect. If I was, I'd let you watch me walk on water. I'm not, okay? Anyway, 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, well, let me take you a little further back. My wife and I just bought a house, okay? And it's a little bit nicer of a house than I thought we were going to buy, but we got a really good deal on it. It was in our budget. It was well within our budget, and we bought this house, and there was one thing that bugged my wife, and that was the kitchen floors and the breakfast nook floors. That's all kind of connected through a hallway type thing. And through that, she wanted to swap the floors. But my dad's side of the family, my mom and dad, said, hey, guys, would you want to have Christmas with all the Ruwe side at your house? And the Ruwes, okay, so I grew up in a Baptist family, okay? We're all Baptist, so there's like 70 of them, okay? There's like 70 of them, okay? I love them all to death, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of us, okay? So anyway, they're all coming over. And my wife says, hey, I want to get the floors done before we have people over. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. yeah, we can do that. Well, so we start on the floors, and I ripped something up, and then my wife was like, okay, so one thing that really bugs me is that I want to move our refrigerator, okay? And I want to put it in front of this doorway, and then let's block the doorway in, and then I want to rip this whole wall out. And I'm like, I can do that. I'm a construction guy, okay? So in a momentary lapse of judgment of my abilities, on a Saturday morning, within 2 hours, I had moved the refrigerator, ripped out a brick wall, and started ripping all the floors out of these 2 rooms. This was just supposed to be a quick weekend job, okay? Well, we did all that, and then I started uncovering things that I am not able to fix by myself. And I got into a real pickle, okay? So not only do we have this full-blown remodel of these 2 rooms that we have a deadline date of December 8th that we're supposed to have everything done by. On top of that, yeah, I know. So on top of that, Emily plays a huge role in preparing our Christmas services over in Danville. We've got all these extracurricular activities that keep popping up around the holidays for the kids and programs, and then we got to go to every single niece and nephew's program. And okay, I'm glad that I can be real, and you guys know what I mean when I'm like every program. Okay, so anyway, we go through all these programs. So anyway, we got all this stuff to do. And on top of that, on top of everything, we're going through a big restructure at work, and I'm a main proponent of trying to help these changes happen, and I'm training people at their new stuff. I'm so stressed out at work. And so 2 weeks ago, I hit a breaking point when my wife was all she was doing was reminding me of all the things that, hey, we got to do this, we got to do this. And I'm like, okay, stop. And I had a full-blown mental breakdown. I mean, like tears, okay? A grown man cried that day. Tears. It happens, okay? Overwhelmed. I'm already burnt out, okay? So my wife likes to joke with me. Anytime I try to do anything, anytime I do home remodel, anytime I say I'm going to start working out at the gym, anytime I do anything big, I start out sprinting, and within a day or 2, I am burnt out, okay? So I started all these things at one time, and I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I'm burnt out, I overcommitted, I don't know what to do. There's too much going on. Too much going on. The holiday season is busy, it's stressful. It's bad enough as it is. And then I decided to remodel 2 rooms all at the same time. Well, so I'm not going to make myself look bad and not pull my wife down with me. We're a team, okay? It's part of marriage. We're a team. So this was like a Wednesday night that we did this, and at the city of Danville, we work 4/10, so I'm off on Fridays. So every Friday morning, it's my thing. I get the kids up, I get them ready, I take them to school, she sleeps in. It's a thing, okay? But much like John, my wife holds our lives together, and so she has all the bags packed, and she lays out their clothes, and all I got to do is literally hey, wake up, put your clothes on. Okay, let's go. And so that's what I did. Okay, I grabbed their bags, we went out the door. And my wife, okay, so when I had all this mental breakdown going on, my wife, I forgot to tell you, holy as she is, said, hey, have you been keeping up, with your relationship with God? Like, have you been praying? Have you been spending alone time, I'm like, well, to be honest with you, I've been so stressed out and so busy that I forgot to think about that stuff. I forgot to prioritize that, okay? Moving on. So 2 days later, it's Friday morning, take the kids to school, walk back in the door, ready, geared up, all that. And I'm like, she's going to help me today. We talked about it. We have a whole plan of what we're going to get done. I walk in the door, and my wife goes, hey, I just realized I forgot to put water bottles in the kids' backpacks. I'm like, okay, so? She's like, well, they need their water bottles in their backpacks. The COVID stuff, they don't drink from the fountains. And I'm like, Emily, it's one day, and I'm sure their teacher's not going to let them die, okay? So I'm like, it's going to be fine, okay? But judging by her reaction, things were, in fact, not fine, okay? Not fine at all. So she has a mental breakdown, and she's like, okay, and I read this to my wife last night, and she's like, David, you need to tell this part of the story, because I wasn't going to tell this about her. She actually asked me to tell us about it, because she's like, every mom in here knows what it's like to be busy, overwhelmed, burnt out, trying to hold the whole family together, and you're on top of all that, you fail at something so small, but it just wrecks your world because you're failing as a mom, and you look around, every other mom's got it going on, every other mom knows what's going on, and you're failing, okay? She said, so I'm assuming you ladies can, okay, anyway, all right, moving on. Okay, so she has a mental breakdown, so I'm like, hey, Emily, go, just go park by a lake. 'Cause at this point, 2 days ago, I had my revelation, and I was saved again, and all was good, all was right with the world, I was realigned, I was all good, so I'm thinking very holy, so I'm like, hey, Emily, we live close to a lake, Lake Vermilion, and I said, hey, why don't you just go park by the lake? It's really pretty out. Just sit there, listen to a podcast, worship music, pray, get your life right, whatever. And she did, and then I was like, go to the gym. Like my wife is an avid gym person, okay, and she married someone like me, but she's big going into the gym. And I said, hey, go to the gym. You haven't been to the gym in a couple weeks, and I know that helps you get your mind right. Go to the gym. Or this is my wife's favorite way to worship God, okay? Her ultimate favorite way to worship God is in TJ Maxx. She loves worshiping God in TJ Maxx. She gets resaved in TJ Maxx, okay? It happens. So anyway, mental breakdown. So within 2 days, both of us had this mental breakdown, and what we had done is if I'm being real, and I'm telling you guys, I'm going to get real. I'm real right now. I'm not going to lie to you. We got out of alignment for a little bit, okay? Now, in the past, okay, I can't say I've had, because I still have, but I'm further along than what I was, some major anxiety issues, okay? I got some control issues. I got all that stuff, and when I was in the worst place, I know we're in college town, and I hope there's some college kids in here, because I can speak to the fact, first of all, I went to the U of I, not Peru, the University of Illinois, better engineering school. All right, it's true, okay? So I went to the U of I for engineering, and I can attest, the most overwhelmed, burnout, stressed out, not enough time in the day that I've ever felt was in college. So I wanted to just bring that in, and the fact that I'm talking a lot about family, but I know that college kids are not excluded in what I'm talking about today, okay? Because you get burnout, exhausted, and there is never enough time in the day. All right. So my wife and I both stink at being Christians. That's the main point. Okay. Anyway, moving on. All right. So we've all been there, but I can tell you this, that our relationship in a lot of ways, so I have recently started going to the gym. On top of everything else I just told you, one of the guys at the gym, he actually goes to our church in Danville too. He's the one that invited me, and so now I have an accountability partner that actually shows up. I've had John as an accountability partner. 3 days, people, 3 days, and he lost his passion for the gym. That is a fact. That's not a lie either. Okay, so anyway, I have a partner that actually shows up. He's jacked. and he asked me, hey, let's run an Ironman or a half an Ironman. We decided for a half. I talked him down, okay? I went with 0, he went with a full, we met in the middle, we're doing a half. So we're doing a half Ironman through the month of November. So you got to swim 1.2 miles, run 13.1, and bike 56 miles through the month of November, added up. I'm not doing that in a day, okay? Okay, so we're doing all that. So I'm doing that as well, and I'm not going to fail at that because about 6 months ago, I decided I need to prioritize my health. That's part of it, because my wife and I always talk about the best thing we can give to our family is a healthy us, okay? A healthy mentally, healthy physically. That's the best thing we can do for our family. So that being said, now I've lost my place. Okay, so we both get to this point where we're like, I'm struggling, we're failing, and we've been through this enough times where we were able to get ourselves out of it. But back in the day, back in my college days, back in my our early marriage days, I think a lot of you know what I'm going to talk about, but what I'm talking about here. But when you're struggling, is it not true that you can scroll through Facebook and every single other person is just winning at life? It's true. And see, that's the thing is, when we get in this overwhelmed, exhausted, we're out of alignment thing, it's like the enemy knows we're burnt out, and I feel like the enemy is almost waiting for us to just get like, oh, I don't know what to do. And he's like, hey, let's stick the dagger in them and get them to watch Facebook because so-and-so just bought a new boat, and he's taking his family out for the whole week on a boat, and, they have all the time in the world and all the money in the world, and it just seems like that. But luckily, we spend enough time around people at church to realize that, I don't want to look at other people's highlight reels. I'm gonna be be true to what's going on, and I've talked to enough people at church, and we're close enough with enough people where we're open and we get real with it. Okay, that's the big thing about being in church. You get real with it with people, and you come to find out absolutely no one has their ducks in a row. Nobody. Okay, so we've established through this so far, all God's children got problems, and that doesn't exclude me. So we're burnt out, we're tired, we're exhausted, and the number one thing that my wife and I both say to each other, there's not enough time in the day to get everything done. We know what we got to get done, we have a list, and there's not enough time in the day. So when we get in that headspace, okay, what we end up telling ourselves is things like this, and I'm talking as a whole, okay, but I've said all these things out loud likely. We say things like, if I only had a different job, I could spend more time with my kids. If I only could get this one thing done, then I wouldn't be so stressed out and I wouldn't treat my wife like garbage. If I could just make a little bit more money, all of our problems would really go away, because, that's where our stress is coming from here. Or if I just had a little bit more free time, just a little bit, I could get into the gym and I could get skinny. But I don't. Or if my husband or my wife would just pick up a little bit more slack at home, we could balance this out a little bit. Okay, I know that's a big one. We all get in the blame game. That's how it works, okay? And that's what the enemy wants you to do, okay? So we get in this rhythm, and then where's my type A people at? My type A personalities. Brittany, raise your hand, okay? All right. There's not very many of us in here, but whoop, whoop, okay. If you're a type A personality, you probably do what I do, okay? You got all this stuff to do. We don't have enough time to get it done. Let's get organized. Let's get organized and make a list, okay? We make a list, prioritize it, and you want to know what? Not enough time, bottom thing, gone. Get it off the list. That's what we do, that type A people do. Don't have enough time. Scratch it off. Kids' clothes aren't getting washed today. I don't know. So anyway, so we start cutting. But the problem is that the Bible tells us we got to be a good spouse. We need to be a good parent. We need to be a good worker at our job. We need to treat everybody with kindness, gentleness, compassion. We need to live generously. We need to give our time. We need to do all this stuff. And there's literally not enough time in the day to get it all done, is what it feels like. And I don't know what to do, so I make a list, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to do it all, so I'm going to budget my time, okay? And I'm adding up the minutes. This is how much time I'm going to spend with my kids today. This is how much, and what ends up happening is well, that doesn't add up because now I'm only getting 3 hours of sleep and I'm going to be a real jerk tomorrow, So that stuff happens. And so I get to this point and I'm like, how do we move past this? What's going on? And so I'm ready to reveal my number one point, okay? So priority number one, prioritize God, okay? So prioritize God, number one. And the thing is there is no number two really, okay? The number two changes. But prioritize God, that's number one point I got. That's my only point I have actually. So let me read a couple verses to you. Luke 12:31. Seek the kingdom of God above all else, and he will give you everything you need. Matthew 6:33. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Seek first, and all these things will be added to you. So a lot of times, if you're like me, what you try to do is you try to create this priority list of your life. And what comes first, what comes next? Is it wife? Okay, no, God comes first. Okay, God. Okay, then is it wife or kids? I don't know. I think it's wife. Okay, I think the Bible does say that, something about that. But then is it church work? Is it work church? Where are we at here? Okay, the problem with doing that is that we're trying to rank our life and we're trying to cross things out that just doesn't fit because we're overwhelmed, we're burnt out, we're exhausted. Well, when I was preparing for this message a few months ago, like John talked about the first time, I stumbled upon this really cool video. It was like in the 80s or something, and this college professor is talking to a class. They recorded it. Now it's on YouTube. You can look it up. But anyway, the college professor is talking to this class it's all pastors, and they're talking about how pastors they get overwhelmed and exhausted, burnout, and how do we do it all? Well, the pastor draws this big circle. If I was more organized, I would have had some graphic, but I don't. So imagine like a wagon wheel, okay? A wagon wheel. Our life is not like a list. Our life is like a wheel, and we got to keep God in the center of it. God's the hub, okay? God's the hub of the wheel, and then all these spokes are things like our kids, our wife, our job, church. All those things are like spokes, okay? And what God does, God holds it all together, and he helps us keep everything balanced and rolling right. So that tire's rolling right. We're going down the road because we got God in the center of our lives, and we're rolling steady, and all's good. And a bump in the road comes, and we need to, some tragic thing happens at work. Got to spend a little bit more time at work. Well, you want to know what? I got God in the middle of everything. And so we shift our priorities around. The priorities don't stay the same all the time. That God's moving those priorities, and he's helping us. He's helping us get it all done. That's what God wants from you. He wants to give him your whole life, okay? So this is the biggest thing. It's a little side note. I have one sentence in my notes about it. It's a little side note. And if you're like me, you are guilty of, and I think most of us are guilty of this, I'm pretty positive, you're guilty of compartmentalizing your life to where God's number one at church, God's number one at home, but I don't really take God to work with me. I go do my work on my own, I'm not letting God in to my work life, okay? You compartmentalize your life, but God doesn't view your life in compartments. God views your life as a whole. God wants all of it. God wants to be number one in your work, number one with your friends, number one at school, number one at church, at home, in your marriage, with your children. God wants to be number one. So, in saying that, what's that look like, I guess, is my thing. What's it look like? So, how am I supposed to do this? What am I supposed to do when I don't have enough time in the day to get it all done? And you get that pit in your stomach, and you're like, I've overcommitted. What do you do? Well, Matthew 11:28 and 29 says, Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I'm humble and I'm gentle at heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. In other words, live your life prioritizing your relationship with Jesus. And Jesus will help you live the rest of your life. And so that's why I'm like, that's my number one point, okay? So if all you guys are sitting here thinking, well, he's already done with his one point and he's already explained it, time to get the Cheddars. No, not the case. Do you guys go to Cheddar's? I love Cheddar's. Okay. All right. So anyway, we do this, and the problem is that we still, we prioritize God in our lives, but what's that look like? Like, what's it look like? So, I did my one point, but you boys got sub-points, okay? And I have never seen John or Brittany teach a message with sub-points, all right? So, sub-point 1A, how am I supposed to prioritize God in my life? So I've got some ways, and this is included but not limited to. I started adding points and reading the message until I got to the point where I was just maxed out on time. So how do you prioritize God? Well, God's got to live in everything, okay? And if he's living in everything, the number one place for God to live, that God does the biggest heart change, in my opinion, what he did in me, this is what he did in me. You can get mad, you can leave, I don't care because it's not my campus. No, I'm joking. No, this is where heart change happens right here, okay? Subpoint 1A, prioritize God in your finances, okay? Everybody hates to hear it, but that's a heart issue. God is not after your money. The church is not after your money. The church and God are after your heart, okay? So it talks about in Deuteronomy, I didn't put this message or verse in here, but it talks about in Deuteronomy how basically the purpose of tithing is to build trust in God, okay? So if you want to trust God with your life, I guarantee you if you start with your finances, you start to trust God, because bumps in the road happen and money gets a little tight, but when you keep putting God first in your finances and you keep tithing and you keep doing that, and you also base your finances on the rest of the Bible where you're not overextending yourself and you've got your ducks in a row and you're budgeting correctly and all that, God blesses that. God blesses that big time. And he doesn't bless it he does bless it like you might think. I'm not tithing because I want God to give back to me and get rich, okay? Originally, I'm not going to lie, I started tithing for that reason. I'm like, Pastor said, press down, shaking, and giving back to you. Barn's overflowing. So I start tithing, okay? But that's not what is actually, what God did is he changed my heart, okay? I taught a message, the last message I taught, it's the only one I've ever taught in main church. Last time, I talked about this and about how stingy I was with my money and how he still jokes with me today about how stingy I am, okay? I'm a tightwad. I get mad at my wife when she goes to TJ Maxx to worship God. So I have this really unhealthy relationship with money, and so I focus on that, and I start tithing, okay? So when we start tithing, my world changes, my heart changes. God changed my heart. I built trust with God, and I started realizing, wow, God's after me. He's after my heart. He changed me. I don't know how. He just changed me. Where now I'm excited to give. I want to be generous. I'm excited for that stuff, okay? So that's God, prioritizing God in your finances. Subpoint 1B, prioritize God with your time. So a while back, the first message I talked about how a guy came into my office from work and he was struggling with not having enough time and all that. And it's always easier to point out somebody else's flaws and tell them how they should change their life than it is to look at yourself and change your life, isn't it? Okay, well, so this thought came into my mind, and I was like, ooh, that's good, I'm going to use that. And so then I started researching. I'm like, because I'm not that good of a Christian yet, so I'm like, I got to Google it to make sure that what my thought is actually valid and biblical, but I think this is biblical. Well, then I saw that Christine Kane has taught it and all this stuff. I'm like, well, not original thought, and it's obviously a big thing. But anyway, prioritize God with your time. So raise your hand if you believe tithing works, okay? All right, raise your hand if you raised your hand because you didn't want everyone to think you're a bad Christian in here. No, joking to go. Okay, so prioritize God with your time. Well, I had this thought, and then I Googled it. Turned out to be factual. But what if we tithed our? Okay, so God blesses our finances when we tithe. What if we tithed our time? What if we prioritize God in our time, and then He blesses the under 90% of our time? What if that's the way it works? What if? I mean, because I can tell you one thing after tithing for a while. I would much rather live on a budget with 90% blessed by God than I would 100% not blessed, okay? In fact, the Bible talks about it being cursed when you do that, but not blessed. So let's just say not blessed, okay? But it's funny how things work, because if I prioritize God with my time, I just started thinking about like real life examples. How could this possibly look? How could it look, okay? So what would it look like if I prioritize God with my time? I wake up in the morning, and I spend time in the Bible, in the Word. I prayed, listened to some worship music, got my mind all right before I start my day. I go to walk out the door, and my wife lips off to me, okay? But my mind's right. I spent time with God, and I'm able to just say, hey, I forgive you, I love you, give her a kiss on the cheek, walk out. You just saved like 20 minutes, okay? So, yeah. Look, no? Okay. So anyway, your mind's right though. You go to work and you spend your day at work and you're like, hey, this is, I honestly think this is how God works a lot of times. You've spent time with Him and He's blessed you. Well, He's helping you, okay? So then this problem arises at work, and something that would have taken you a whole bunch of time and you maybe would have had to put some extra time in. But just for some odd reason, an obvious solution popped into your head. And, surely God can't be holy at work. Okay, I believe God works in all things, in your whole life. So that happens, and next thing you know, you got a little bit of extra time that you get to focus on your kids. Maybe it's not so much of a time thing, because I know even though I'm only at work for 10 hours a day, I come home and I spend another 3 hours stressed out about work, okay? That happens. So even though you're not physically there, a lot of times you're mentally there, and you're not mentally there for your kids and your family. So that being said, I believe God, when we prioritize God with our time, God blesses us. He blesses our time. All right, so subpoint 1C, prioritize God at your job. At your job. Okay, this one's going to be quick, but I'm just going to throw a scenario out, okay? Scenario is, I'm younger, and my number one priority, make more money, get promotions, okay? That's it. That's my only two priorities. So everything I do is based upon that thought process, okay? I want to make more money. I want to get promotions. I want to have the power. I want to have the money. That's it, okay? So, and I can tell you that that's how majority of people think. And what I started doing as I'm getting further along in my relationship with God, I'm growing in my relationship, and God changes my heart. I start tithing. God's changing my heart. And next thing you know, like, my focus isn't on making money and being powerful. My focus starts shifting where I want to make people better around me. I want to be a better leader. I want to help people become better, not only at work, but I want to help them be better at home so that their family lives are better. Because as people get better and the people around me get better, I don't care if they're above me, below me, next to me, like, I want to make everybody better. I want to help them get better. I want to be that support system. That's my focus now. My focus isn't on making money and getting promotions. Well, you start doing that, and your focus is on helping the company get better and helping the world get better, making a difference, showing people God's love while you're at work. You can do that and still stay business-like and not say things you shouldn't. And next thing you know, you start getting promotions, and you start making more money because the company sees, wow, this guy's making a difference in our company, okay? That's how it works. Even though you're prioritizing God, God's bringing that stuff back to you, and you're seeing blessing from it. So, oh man, oh boy. All right. I thought I was going to go short. I went long. 5 more minutes, guys. I've always wanted to say that. I hate when pastors say, can you guys just give me 5 more minutes? 5 more minutes? Okay. It just came out of my mouth. I didn't even mean to. All right, here we go. All right. Subpoint 1D, all right? Prioritize God in all your relationships. This is your marriage, your dating relationship. It's your family. It's your friends. It's the people that you call your friends but you hate. It's all those people. Prioritize God in your relationships, okay? I want to read a verse to you. 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. It'll sound familiar because you hear it at every single wedding, okay? When you're in a relationship, God wants you to treat everybody with love. What does love look like? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It's not proud. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. What if, I don't even need to explain, what if we treated everyone with love, that kind of love, okay? What would that do in our world, in our families, in our relationships all around? Point 1E, trying to hurry here. Prioritize church, okay. Prioritize God in church, sorry. Prioritize God in church. What's that look like? Well, this is, I guess, my main focus because I've, outside of tithing, this has probably been the biggest heart change for me, okay? And I know that when we're struggling, and, oh man, I'm feeling it now, okay. When we're struggling, okay, and you're overwhelmed and you're burnt out, the very first thing that you cut out is typically church, which is the very first thing that helps you the most. So we get burnt out and we're like, oh, okay, I just need one day of rest, so I'm going to just skip this Sunday. You stay in bed, you watch online, you end up watching half of it because you get bored, you shut it off, and you start scrolling through Facebook. That happens. But prioritize God in church. Be there. God doesn't just make us to sit at home and God, we don't come to church just to take in. We come to church to utilize our gifts, okay? So God's changed my heart in this, and I'm here to use my gifts, the gifts God's given me, use what I'm good at, because God calls us to be in church, to be here, to be serving, to be on a team. Use your gifts. It doesn't matter if you're good with kids, if you're good at just, if you can only smile and say hi, God uses that. Like, God has given you guys each, He gives everybody gifts. And He wants us to use those for His kingdom. Now, we can use those outside of church in all different places, but I started at church. And I started using my gifts. I didn't know I was doing it. I was just said yes and joined a team, okay? Well, I think most of us do that. We're just like, oh, okay, fine, put me on the schedule, okay? But what it did is so many things happened from that, okay? So I started to feel purpose in my life. I started to feel that purpose of like, wow, I'm not just living life and I'm not in it for me. Like, I feel passion because I'm changing people's lives. I mean, it doesn't matter if you smiled and said hi. You helped prepare somebody's heart when they walked in the room. I mean, the purpose you feel and the purpose God gives us is so much greater than what you do at your job. So God's changed my heart in this to the point where I'm like, like I work, to make money, I provide for my family and all that, but I'm more passionate about what I do at church because, like, what's putting food on the table, what's more important? Like, just putting food on the table and providing for my family, or changing people's lives and growing God's kingdom. Now, I don't mean to pull like a guilt trip, but I don't need to pull a guilt trip. If you get plugged in and you start with the right mindset, God's changing your heart. You're going to know what I'm talking about, okay? So not only that, but I've developed all these relationships with people, okay? I developed all these relationships with people, and I've got this support group around me all of a sudden. And then when me and my wife start having issues where we're overwhelmed and we're burnt out and all that, people know me well enough that they see it on my face. And they're like, hey, man, you doing good? You all right? And next thing you know, you got people that are praying for you, praying with you. I mean, serving at church, you're helping people. You're helping people. But I can honestly say I've had more come back to me, and I've seen more blessing and a heart change from serving at church than what I'm given. I mean, God's using me, and I know that, but I mean, God's using everybody else, and He's using the church to change my heart. So, as I'm wrapping this up, I just want you to know, like, prioritize God. I just scratched the surface of ways we can prioritize God. I just wanted to give some examples, some real life examples of maybe some things that might happen and ways that God can move in our lives when we prioritize Him in our stuff. So, family octagon, love, battle, win. How does this tie in? Well, I think when we prioritize God, God works in everything. So I don't know if you noticed, but like you prioritize God. I just went through all those points. That's all one thing. I mean, like I said, God doesn't want to live in part of your life. He wants to live in all your life. That's all one thing. It's all wrapped up into one. So God's changing everything, and He's changing your family. So I hate giving credit to my wife for this because I want to sound like I'm just so profound, but I'm not. So I read this to my wife. I read the whole message, and I'm like, hey, I don't know how to end this. So we start talking about the points. My wife says something that sounds like a philosopher, and I want to close with this, okay? She said, if somebody prioritizes their life, and if they prioritize God in every area of their life, if somebody prioritizes God in every area of their life, and we're talking about family here, what's that do for your family? Okay, you're a living example to your kids, to your spouse, to, everybody around you. You become a world changer, okay? You're not just changing your world and your little family. You're changing people as you come in contact with them. You treat people with love for 5 minutes that you interact with them. They walk away thinking, something's different about them, you know? And next thing you know, your family starts seeing all that, and they change, okay? And this is what I got to read. Every part of your family is changed, and guess what? You've changed your kids. Well, now those generational things, maybe those generational curses that happen, change, and they stop with you. And then your kids grow up, and they saw you in the way you lived your life, and God helps them get a little bit better, and then a little bit better. And then next thing you know, you've changed, and not only have you changed generations to come in your family, like this is what she said, you're leaving a legacy. You're leaving a legacy. Just imagine the change that can happen from that. So, the family octagon, love, battle, win. Leave a legacy by prioritizing God in your life. It's going to happen. So, all right.